0400 local time, a Russian Tor M2 air defense commander in northern Crimea watched his pulse Doppler radar sweep a cold, empty sky. On paper, his position was an iron fortress, a multi-layered shield designed to turn anything with a wingspan into a rain of titanium fragments. But the tactical display was about to lie to him. 3 miles to the north, 2 Ukrainian UJ-22 drones clawed for altitude, their internal transponders screaming with intentional electromagnetic noise. This wasn't a mistake or a failure of electronic discipline. It was a digital suicide note designed to be read by every Russian sensor within the 50 kilometers. The Tor M2 is built on a doctrine of total certainty, typically firing 2 missiles per target to ensure a kill probability of over 95%. As the drones crested 1,000 meters, the Russian system did exactly what the Ukrainian planners anticipated. It locked on, stabilized, and ripples of solid fuel propellant lit up the darkness. The first fast win for the attackers wasn't a destroyed tank or a leveled building. It was the successful extraction of 4 high-velocity interceptor missiles from the Russian magazine for the price of 2 low-cost lawnmower engines. The Ukrainian drones had just turned a $1 million defensive volley into a resource allocation nightmare, and the real operation hadn't even crossed the perimeter fence. Before we continue, make sure to hit like and subscribe. It really helps the channel grow. The northern drones didn't wait for impact. As the Russian missiles transitioned to their terminal homing phase, the Ukrainian pilots shoved the sticks forward, putting the airframes into a vertical high-G dive toward the uneven Crimean scrubland. This maneuver exploited a fundamental physical limitation of the Tor M2's fire control logic known as the Doppler gate. By diving abruptly, the drones merged their radar signatures with the moving ground clutter, forcing the Russian interceptors to filter out the targets as if they were nothing more than wind-blown trees or shifting dust. The missiles, traveling at over twice the speed of sound, couldn't compensate for the sudden loss of a clean tracking solution. Their proximity fuses, confused by the massive infrared return of the Earth rising to meet them, triggered prematurely or buried themselves into the dirt. In under 60 seconds, the first layer of the most advanced short-range air defense in the world had been defeated by basic geometry and a deep understanding of sensor noise. The drones leveled out at 50 meters, invisible and unharmed, while the Russian crew scrambled to reload canisters that were now frustratingly empty. The stakes immediately shifted south, where a second pair of drones was already threading a needle that the Russian radar hadn't even realized existed. While the Tor crew was occupied with the high-altitude distraction, the second pair of Ukrainian drones was navigating a pre-mapped blind spot in the local topography. Flying at a sustained altitude of 30 to 50 meters, these aircraft entered a corridor only 400 meters wide, where the curvature of the Earth and a series of limestone ridges shielded them from the S-400 long-range surveillance radars. This wasn't luck. It was the result of weeks of high-resolution satellite mapping and signal intelligence that identified exactly where the Russian radar beams overshot the terrain. The drones moved at 95 kilometers per hour, a speed specifically chosen to exploit the velocity filters of the Russian automated systems. Most modern air defense software is programmed to ignore objects moving slower than 100 kilometers per hour to prevent the screens from being cluttered by flocks of migrating birds or large insects. By flying at 95, the Ukrainian drones effectively became biological entities in the eyes of the machine. They were ghosts in the system, moving through the most defended airspace on the planet as if they were part of the local ecosystem. The second fast win was secured as they cleared the ridgeline, placing them within visual range of the airfield's secondary defense perimeter without a single alarm being triggered. The middle pair of drones introduced a tactic that bordered on the suicidal. Instead of hiding, they flew directly toward the remaining Tor M2 launcher, exploiting the system's minimum engagement range. Every missile system has a dead zone, a physical space too close to the launcher for the missile to arm its warhead or for the guidance fins to grip the air and steer. By charging headlong into the heart of the battery, the drones force the Russian safety protocols to take over. The system's logic prevents the launch of a missile if the resulting explosion would damage the launcher itself, or if the required turn rate would snap the missile's airframe. The Russian operators watched in horror as the drones buzzed less than 200 meters over their heads, too close to shoot and too low to track. This was a total breakdown of the defensive layer, achieved not through high-tech jamming but through a cold calculation of safety margins and physical constraints. The drones didn't stop to engage the battery. They used the confusion to punch through the inner ring, heading straight for the high-value assets parked on the tarmac. The first layer of defense had been dismantled, but a Buk M3 battery was already slewing its massive radar dish to intercept the breach. The Buk M3 system represents a significant leap in lethality, utilizing a track-via missile guidance method that essentially turns the interceptor itself into a secondary radar receiver. This allows the Russian battery to maintain a high-resolution lock even when the target is maneuvering violently near the ground. As the Ukrainian drones cleared the inner Tor perimeter, the Buk system's command vehicle began partitioning the sky into engagement cells, reducing the reaction time for the automated fire control loop to less than 5 seconds. The Ukrainian response was a masterclass in terrain masking. Instead of attempting to outrun the Mach 3 missiles, the drones banked hard toward a derelict concrete grain elevator situated on the edge of the airfield. By placing a massive stationary structure between themselves and the incoming interceptor's radar seeker, the drones created a momentary break in the data link. The Buk missile, unable to distinguish the tiny wooden drone from the massive return of the industrial building, drifted off course. While one Ukrainian drone was caught in the resulting blast of debris and lost, the majority of the flight emerged from the smoke, continuing their low-level transit toward the parked aircraft. This loss was calculated into the mission's attrition rate, a $1,500 airframe sacrifice to defeat a $2 million missile. The remaining drones further complicated the Russian tracking math by executing a series of crossing maneuvers, physically merging their radar signatures on the operator's screens. To an automated system like the Buk, two targets flying in such close proximity appear as a single, ambiguous blob of energy. When the drones suddenly broke in opposite directions, the tracking computer suffered from computational overload, momentarily freezing as it attempted to decide which return to follow. This ambiguity created a 10-second window of total tracking failure. During this gap, the Russian crew attempted to switch to the electro-optical backup system, a high-definition thermal camera designed for low-signature targets. However, the pre-dawn salt haze of the Crimean coast, combined with the low-light conditions, rendered the thermal sensors nearly blind. The infrared signatures of the drones were too cold against the background of the humid morning air, and by the time the system achieved a fuzzy visual lock, the drones had already dropped below the tree line of the airfield's western taxiway. The Buk system ultimately disengaged, its software acknowledging an inability to provide a high-confidence firing solution against such unconventional, low-observable behavior. As the drones approached the final 3 kilometers, the S-400's local battalion attempted a last-ditch software override. Usually reserved for high-altitude ballistic threats, the system was forced to lower its engagement floor to its absolute physical limit. It was here that a critical legacy flaw in the Russian software suite became a weapon for the attackers. To prevent the massive S-400 radars from being overwhelmed by the thousands of birds that migrate over the Black Sea, the system utilizes a velocity filter that automatically discards any object moving below 100 kilometers per hour. The Ukrainian drones, sensing the increased radar pressure from the S-400's engagement pulses, throttled back to exactly 95 kilometers per hour. To the most advanced long-range air defense system on the planet, the incoming strike package simply vanished, categorized by the central processor as a group of large gulls. This moment underscored a devastating reality of modern warfare. The more advanced a system becomes, the more it relies on assumptions about what a real target looks like. By refusing to act like a traditional cruise missile or a fighter jet, the Ukrainian drones navigated through a billion-dollar sensor net using the same logic a bird uses to find a nesting site. The Russian response finally devolved into the shortest-range layer available, the Pantsir-I gun and missile systems. Unlike the static long-range batteries, the Pantsir is mobile, but the speed of the Ukrainian infiltration forced the Russian crews into a rushed, disorganized deployment. Several Pantsir units attempted to fire while still transitioning from their travel configuration to their combat stance, a process that severely degrades the stabilization of the twin 30mm cannons. As the Ukrainian drones crested the final security fence, the Pantsir crews opened fire, filling the air with a wall of lead and tracer rounds. However, the drones were programmed to perform erratic, low-amplitude jitters, constant, unpredictable changes in heading and altitude that prevented the Russian lead-calculating computers from finding a center-of-mass solution. The 30mm rounds, designed to intercept much larger and faster-moving targets like A-10 Warthogs or Tomahawk missiles, whistled through the empty air where the drones had been a fraction of a second prior. The mismatch between the system's design intent and the target's actual behavior was absolute. The Russian defenses were converging, but they were doing so with the frantic, uncoordinated energy of a giant trying to swat a swarm of hornets with a sledgehammer. The Panzer systems, now fully active, attempted to transition from their 30mm cannons to their 57 E6 interceptor missiles, but the drones were already inside the minimum arming distance for the radar-guided munitions. In a desperate bid to save the airbase, a Russian pilot in a nearby Sukhoi 35, returning from a separate patrol, was ordered to intercede. This created an immediate no-fire zone for the ground-based batteries. Russian safety protocols are rigid. They prevent the automated Pantsir and S-400 systems from firing when a friendly transponder is detected within the same engagement cone to avoid fratricide. The Ukrainian drones, sensing the interceptor's high-power radar, tucked themselves directly into the Sukhoi's landing approach path. By mimicking the descent profile of the massive fighter, the two remaining drones used the Russian aircraft as a physical and electronic shield. The ground crews, paralyzed by the fear of shooting down their own multi-million-dollar jet, held their fire for 12 critical seconds. It was a masterstroke of real-time manipulation, turning the defenders' own safety logic into a terminal gateway for the strike. By the time the Sukhoi flared for landing and cleared the lane, the drones had already accelerated into their final attack vectors, leaving the Panzer operators with a tracking solution that was 3 seconds too late. The final two Ukrainian drones pitched up to 200 meters before rolling into a steep 70-degree terminal dive. At this angle, the drones were no longer trying to hide. They were maximizing the kinetic energy and the impact footprint of their shaped charge warheads. The first drone targeted a BE-12 amphibious search and rescue aircraft parked on the northern apron. The impact was surgical, punching through the thin aluminum skin of the center fuselage and igniting the internal fuel bladders. The resulting explosion wasn't just a fireball, it was a high-pressure rupture that sent shards of the aircraft's specialized radar equipment screaming across the tarmac like shrapnel. The second drone, following less than 5 seconds behind, corrected its flight path mid-dive to strike a parked Mi-8 transport helicopter. The Ukrainian planners had identified that the Russian ground crews had failed to maintain proper asset spacing, parking the helicopter less than 15 meters from a mobile refueling truck. When the drone struck the helicopter's rotor mast, the secondary explosion of the fuel truck turned the entire western section of the apron into a blast furnace. The multi-layered billion-dollar defense network had been bypassed, exploited, and ultimately rendered irrelevant by a handful of drones that cost less than a single Russian tire. As the smoke from the burning BE-12 rose into the Crimean sky, the mission's final objective was realized: documentation. A third, high-altitude reconnaissance drone, which had remained silent and invisible throughout the chaos, captured high-resolution infrared footage of the burning wreckage and the frantic, failed response of the airbase security teams. This footage, transmitted via encrypted satellite link before the drone even left Russian airspace, served as the ultimate payoff for the operation. It transformed a tactical victory into a strategic blow to Russian prestige, proving that even the most dense and technologically superior air defense environments possess systemic vulnerabilities that can be weaponized. The total cost of the Ukrainian strike package was estimated at less than $50,000. The recorded damage, a destroyed maritime patrol aircraft, a transport helicopter, a refueling vehicle, and the total depletion of a Tor M2 missile magazine exceeded $45 million in hardware alone. More importantly, the psychological shield of the Crimean fortress had been shattered. The operation concluded not with a massive fleet of bombers, but with the quiet, persistent hum of low-cost engines disappearing back into the morning mist, leaving a burning airfield behind them as proof that in modern warfare, creativity is the deadliest weapon in the inventory. The strike's brutality reached its peak as the second drone's impact on the Mi-8 transport helicopter triggered a chain reaction that the Russian ground crews were physically unable to contain. Because the airbase had ignored standard dispersal protocols, the helicopter was parked in a dense cluster of support vehicles and auxiliary power units when the Ukrainian drone's shaped charge warhead punched through the helicopter's transmission housing. It didn't just ignite the internal fuel cells, it sent a localized shockwave through the tarmac that ruptured the high-pressure lines of an adjacent refueling Bowser. Within 3 seconds, a river of burning aviation kerosene began flowing toward a second Mi-8. effectively turning the parking apron into a massive open-air blast furnace. The Russian fire crews, already reeling from the initial explosion of the BE-12, found themselves trapped between two expanding walls of fire. The heat was so intense that the aluminum skin of the nearby vehicles began to liquefy and drip onto the concrete, creating a secondary hazard of molten metal. This wasn't just the destruction of a single airframe, it was a systemic collapse of the airfield's immediate support infrastructure, achieved through the simple physics of a 10-kilogram explosive placed with sub-meter precision. The final, most devastating win of the morning occurred when the heat from the burning refueling truck reached a stack of uncontained rocket pods waiting to be loaded onto the attack helicopters. The Russian ordnance technicians had left several pods of 80mm unguided rockets on transport trailers, believing the air defense umbrella made the risk of a secondary cook-off negligible. As the fire from the Me-8 enveloped the trailers, the solid fuel motors of the rockets began to self-ignite, turning the loading zone into a chaotic, unguided artillery range. Dozens of rockets began cooking off in random directions, screaming across the taxiways and slamming into the reinforced hangars. One rocket skipped off the concrete and punched through the door of a maintenance bay where a third aircraft was undergoing engine repairs, igniting a secondary fire that gutted the interior of the building in less than 90 seconds. The Pantsir crews, still trying to acquire the now-departed drones, were forced to abandon their vehicles as shrapnel from their own ordnance began peppering the defensive line. The Ukrainian planners had turned the Russian airbase into its own worst enemy, using the base's own fuel and ammunition to finish the job that the drones had started.